Hello, this is the luckiest maths teacher in the world. Thank you so much for tuning into this video in which we will look at solving worded problems using equations. So we are always going to use these three steps. Firstly, we're going to define a variable. That means you start off by always writing let x equal the thing you're trying to find. Secondly, we're going to turn the worded information into an equation, and once you've done that, all the hard work is done. You're just going to solve as normal. All right, let's look at a worded problem so you know what I'm talking about. So let's say a maths tutor charges $30 call-out fee plus $40 per hour. How long must he work in order to earn $150? So this is not an easy one to do. We're going to follow these steps. The first step is let x equal what you're trying to find. So here we are trying to find how long, in other words, how many hours. I'm going to let x be the number of hours worked. That's what it means to define a variable. So step one is done. Step two, I need to turn this worded information into an equation. So that means we're going to rewrite all of this information using only mathematical symbols and numbers, because some of this information isn't required. For example, you can probably tell it doesn't matter whether this dude's a maths tutor or an electrician or whatever. It doesn't matter if it's about money. That will not affect how we do the question. All we need to know is he gets paid $40 per hour, $40 times the number of hours, plus a $30 fee to come out, and that gives him $150. That's all we need to know. So I've rewritten this information. $40 per hour plus $30 equals $150. So once you've got to this step, hard work is done. We know how to solve these equations. We've done them a million times. So we're going to start by subtracting 30 from both sides. And the way we undo timesing by 40, we're going to divide each side by 40. So I get x equals 120 divided by 40 equals 3. So you should write a worded answer at the end. So what have we actually found? Well, x is the number of hours worked. We found x was equal to 3, so therefore we found that this person must work for 3 hours. If he works for 3 hours, he will get $150. All right, let's look at a slightly harder example. So in 8 years' time, James will be twice as old as he was 5 years ago. How old is James? This is a difficult question, but don't stray from the process. We're going to follow the same three steps that were on the previous slide. The first step is define a variable. That means let x be the thing you're trying to find. So in this question, we're trying to find James's age. So I'm going to let x be James's age. So the second step is to turn the worded information into an equation. Rewrite it using only mathematical symbols. So this is not easy to do in this question, which is why I chose it. But let's try and write 8 years' time. So if James is x, how do we write his age in 8 years' time? Well, in 8 years' time, it'll just be x plus 8. His age in 8 years' time will be whatever his age is now, plus 8 years. So that's his age in 8 years' time. How do I write his age 5 years ago? Well, his age 5 years ago is whatever his age is now minus 5. You know, if he was 22 now, he was 17 5 years ago. So how do we turn this into an equation? Remember that an equation requires an equal sign. Well, it says from the information, his age in 8 years' time is the same as double timesing by 2 his age 5 years ago. So this is my equation. So third step, we now need to solve this. So we've already done solving equations when the pronumeral is on both sides. Remember, what you need to do is first expand any brackets that are there. So 2 times x, 2 times -5. And then you need to get x to one side of the equation by subtracting the one with the lowest coefficient. Remember, x and 1x are the same thing. So the coefficient of this x is 1, the coefficient of this x is 2. This one has a lower coefficient, so we subtract it from both sides. We're subtracting x or 1x from both sides. So x minus x is just 0, so I'm left with 8 on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, 2x minus 1x is just x, and I've got the minus 10. So remember, x and 10, they are not like terms, so you can't subtract one from the other. That's why I only subtracted the x from this term. So now that we've got here, this is really simple. The way I undo subtracting 10 is adding 10 to both sides. So I'm left with x equals 18. So remember, x was James's age. So I've just found out James's age is 18. So James is 18 years old. So you should always write a worded answer at the end just to show that you've understood what you found. All right, we're done. Now let's look at one final type of question, which is when you have two unknown quantities. So it's vitally important when you're solving an equation in which there are two unknown quantities, you have to write both of them using the same prenumeral. It probably doesn't make a lot of sense now, so let's look at this question and hopefully I can elucidate that for you. So 2003-04 season, Arsenal didn't lose any matches. They won 14 matches more than they drew, played 30 matches in total. How many did they win and how many did they draw? So this is what I mean when there are multiple quantities. Unlike the previous question, the thing that we wanted to find was James's age. In the one before that, we were finding how many hours worked. In both of those questions, there was only one thing we didn't know, one thing we needed to find. Here there are two. How many matches they won, how many they drew. This is an example of a question in which there are two unknown quantities. So we're still going to follow the same three steps. So step one is to define variable. So the problem here is, what do you let x equal? The number they've won or the number they've drawn? It doesn't matter so much, but I'm going to tell you, just to make it easier on yourself, always let x be the smaller quantity. So here the number they drew was smaller. So I'm going to let x equal the number of matches that they drew, number of matches drawn. So this note in blue at the top says write both quantities using the same prenumeral. What that means is I don't use another letter for the other quantity. I'm not going to let y be the number of matches they won. The reason for that, we don't know how to solve equations when there is more than one unknown. We don't know how to solve equations when there is more than one pronumeral. We only know how to solve when it's like just x's or just a's or whatever. So I'm not going to let y equal the number of matches won. So how am I going to write the number of matches won? Well, the number of matches won is the same as the number that were drawn, except it has 14 added to it. You know, if they drew 5 matches, they won 19. So to find the number of matches you've won, you just take the number you've drawn and add 14. So what I've done is I've defined both quantities, both unknowns, using the same letter, the same prenumeral. And it's vitally important you do that. So that just made step one really difficult. But step two is just the same as it was in the previous examples. We are going to turn all of this into an equation. Rewrite it using only mathematical symbols. So, of course, there is a lot of information we don't need. Doesn't matter that it was the 2003-04 season. Doesn't matter that it's Arsenal, which is, an awesome team. All of that doesn't change how we're going to set up the equation. All we need to know is the number of matches drawn plus the number of matches won gives us 38 matches in total. That's all we need. So how am I going to solve this? Remember, when the prenumeral's in more than one spot, you must first move it to one spot. So collect like terms. X plus x is 2x. I'll leave the 14 alone now. Now we have an equation that's easy to solve. We've solved equations like this so many times. All we need to do is subtract 14 from both sides, and then we need to divide by 2. So we get 12. Now we're not done. The question asked us for two things: how many they won, how many they drew. Well, X is the number drawn. I found out how many that they've drawn. I also need to state how many they've won. So what I found is that they drew 12 matches. So the number that they won is 12 plus 14, which is 26. So notice 26 is 14 more than 12, and both of these add up to 38 games. All right, thank you so much for tuning into this video. This has been the luckiest maths teacher in the world. Have a great day.